I've never had to work with a high school graduate on my team before. Please don't ever appear in front of me again." She then poured a second glass of red wine for herself. I thought she was going to drink it as she picked it up, but instead she flung it at me. This was the first time I had ever been treated so shamefully, despite all the difficulties I had faced in my early years as a result of my educational background. It was not just the alcohol seeping through my shirt that caused me such severe anguish. I felt I had to tell Megan the truth about her actions. "My name is Henry, and I'm in my 40s, I remarked icily as I used a napkin to wipe my face. I used to work for a home construction company that had an international office. I recently got transferred to headquarters, which is why I'm using the past tense. People assume I have an excellent job background because of my experience working overseas and the national recognition of the company I work for, but that's not at all the case. My greatest degree of education is a high school diploma, even though I attended college but never received my degree. Studying wasn't really something I wanted to do. Without any actual motivation, I simply enrolled in college because everyone else was, which is why I was unable to stay in college. It caused me to go through some really difficult periods in my early 20s. It doesn't seem good to merely have a high school degree, and people who found out about my schooling frequently made fun of me for it. That being said, I couldn't dispute that I completed high school. Rather, I took the derision as inspiration to put in more effort. In a way, I'm grateful to people who didn't think highly of me because it motivated me to keep going. The college you attended becomes less significant by the time you reach your 40s. Instead, it's a time when people are evaluated based on their past achievements. Therefore, it's safe to conclude that the world is even more difficult now than it was in the past. I was frequently respected by those around me at the overseas branch since I was able to provide respectable results. However, I've been made fun of once more for being a high school graduate ever since I was moved to headquarters. Megan, an executive officer, has once again treated me coldly because I just have a high school diploma. "Hey, Henry, have you finished cleaning the entrance? It still smelled pretty bad and there was quite a bit of dirt left. If you can't even handle basic chores like that, the new hires coming soon are going to laugh at you. None of the incoming employees are going to have a lower educational background than you, so at least make sure you do your job properly." Megan routinely assigns me tasks like cleaning without a second thought. But cleaning the entrance wasn't my responsibility today. Of course, that doesn't mean I leave it dirty. Everyone, regardless of position, takes turns cleaning the office and entering before business hours. And when I passed through this morning, everything was already clean. I responded to Megan as diplomatically as I could. "Megan, with all due respect, I was informed that cleaning duties are shared by everyone, regardless of position, on a rotating basis. As part of my learning experience, I joined a younger employee last week to help with it, but this week it shouldn't be my turn. Besides, when I came through this morning, other employees had already cleaned, and it looked fine. But if you notice something dirty, I can go check it out right now." I hinted that I was willing to act if needed while subtly questioning why she kept assigning these tasks to me. However, my response seemed to annoy her. Megan's face turned red and she slammed her pen on the desk, saying, "Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty coming from some small-town branch? Just having someone with such a low level of education here at headquarters is a burden for us. I don't expect much from your work, so at the very least, take care of the chores willingly." I was transferred to the headquarters by direct order of our CEO after my accomplishments at the overseas branch were recognized. To be treated like a nuisance from a backwater branch feels pretty insulting. And while I don't mean to disrespect the U.S., being sent to work abroad is something you're chosen for based on your performance. The branch I worked at in Toulouse, France, isn't exactly what you call a small-town location. Then again, maybe Megan, unfamiliar with places outside the U.S., thinks Toulouse is some remote village. If that's the case, it seems a bit ignorant. But I've heard Megan boast about graduating from Harvard, saying she excelled academically. Even someone like her must have areas she's not well versed in. I didn't feel like pursuing the matter further, so I let it slide and nodded along. However, since I didn't push back, Megan must have mistaken it as a sign of weakness because she pressed on even further. "Well, maybe that laid-back attitude worked in your small-town culture, but it won't fly here. If I decide you're not needed, I'll send you right back to that small-town branch." The Toulouse branch I worked at is by far the most coveted location among employees looking for overseas assignments. There are countless people eager to work there, so I couldn't help but find it ridiculous that Megan used it as a threat. I struggled to hold back a smile that was threatening to appear. Then, keeping a serious expression, I said, "My apologies for not paying closer attention. I'll be more careful moving forward. I'll redo the cleaning right away." With that, I started walking toward the company's entrance. Behind me, Megan barked out orders in a dismissive tone. "Make sure it's done before the workday starts. And of course, don't forget the restroom cleaning afterward. Oh, and you might as well make coffee for me and the other managers while you're at it." I felt a pang of irritation, but decided that keeping a low profile would help me better understand the dynamics and atmosphere at headquarters. While I was tempted to reveal why I'd really returned to the headquarters, I figured letting Megan continue for a while might be useful. By doing so, I might uncover areas where the company could improve. I resigned myself to this approach and kept walking, feeling Megan's cold stare on my back. When I got to the entrance, as expected, there wasn't any noticeable dirt. In fact, the glass windows and even the tracks where dirt typically collects were spotless, wiped clean without a speck of dust. Today's cleaning staff must have been incredibly thorough. They clearly made an effort to ensure both employees and visitors could feel welcome in the office. It was obvious that Megan simply wanted to dump some trivial tasks on me. After some time passed since I returned to headquarters, the initially polite treatment I received turned into blatant condescension. Once they learned I only had a high school diploma, it seems Megan, being a Harvard graduate, mistakenly believes it's acceptable to treat people with less education poorly. Sam, the CEO, had asked me to start in April, but I returned from France early and received his approval to rejoin in March under the radar without revealing my role. Megan's behavior was undeniably over the line, but I could see from the other employees' diligent work and genuine dedication that this company still had tremendous potential for growth. As a major home construction company, it probably screens candidates heavily through application forms before interviews, as Megan hinted. I hadn't encountered another employee without a college degree yet. Though I struggled academically and couldn't continue in college, seeing the younger employees today made me reflect on how much more driven and eager to learn they are compared to the younger version of myself. It made me truly happy to work alongside such dedicated individuals. With these thoughts in mind, I returned to the office, only for Megan to smirk as soon as she saw me, as if she found something amusing. Puzzled, I quickly realized something was off. My desk, which had been there earlier, was completely gone. Where did my desk go? Without it, I'm going to have a hard time getting my work done. When I asked Megan, she pointed down the hallway before answering. Her voice trembled, as if she was trying to hold back laughter. I moved it to the hallway because it was an eyesore. Working while looking at your face lowers my productivity. Besides, aren't you in sales? Instead of sitting at a desk, shouldn't you be out making calls or visiting clients? To be fair, because of the nature of my job, I was rarely in the office. And since I wouldn't be sitting at that desk for more than a month, it was placed in a somewhat inconvenient spot. I was even concerned it might block foot traffic for other employees. So I could understand Megan's point about it being in the way. However, blatantly relocating one employee's desk to the hallway was crossing the line. Feeling that she had gone too far, I asked Megan, "Did you move my desk to the hallway because it's in the way, or is it because you don't like me?" Though my words were polite, I was directly addressing the issue. I could tolerate Megan's snide behavior, but I worried about the incoming new hires potentially being subjected to the same treatment. That concern prompted my question. Megan responded in a chillingly cold voice. "That's quite bold of you to ask. Okay, I'll tell you. It's both." So both reasons were correct. She didn't like me, and that's why she decided to put my desk in the hallway. Megan is old enough to be an adult. You'd think she'd act more maturely, but her behavior was embarrassingly childish. As I wonder if any employees have been hurt by Megan's actions before I arrived, she suddenly began reminiscing. This is a publicly traded home construction company, well known nationwide, so our employees are from decent colleges. Speaking of which, There was one low-educated employee from a no-name private university that you couldn't even graduate from back in the day, that you had to pay money to get into. Megan spoke with nostalgic tone. Her story went as follows. Apparently, Megan was that employee's supervisor in the past. The employee was energetic and disciplined, with a demeanor reminiscent of someone from an athletic background. However, since he hadn't graduated from a prestigious or highly ranked university, Megan apparently perceived him as somewhat lacking in intelligence. So she ordered him to obtain various certifications and pressured him by saying he wouldn't be allowed to work until he passed. This ultimately led to the employee quitting his job. She spoke proudly about that part of her past, but I assumed she had to be joking. With a wry smile, I asked Megan, "Surely you're exaggerating or joking, right? And honestly, don't you think placing so much importance on someone's alma mater doesn't really affect their ability to work in sales or other roles?" In response to my words, Megan shook her head in denial. Then, with a condescending look, she continued, "It's neither a joke nor an exaggeration. It's an absolute fact. And your comment just sounds like an excuse to justify your lack of effort and admit that you're fine being undereducated." Her words sent a chill down my spine. While it might be reasonable to instruct employees to acquire job-related knowledge, refusing to let someone work until they obtain unrelated qualifications is a clear compliance violation. Apparently, some of the certifications Megan demanded were so difficult that even specialists would struggle to pass. I couldn't help but feel sorry for that employee who must have been driven to despair under her leadership. Soon, new hires would join the company, and if Megan targeted any of them, it could lead to serious trouble. We live in a time when a single instance of misguided management can escalate into a major societal issue. As a company, we must be vigilant about the behavior of both employees and managers. I reminded myself that I needed to keep a close watch on Megan's behavior moving forward. With that resolve in mind, I returned to my work. Time flew by. While working at headquarters since April, I've been fully immersed in launching a new business project in collaboration with other companies, leaving me rarely in the office. At the upcoming social gathering, I'd see Megan for the first time in weeks, but I couldn't help worrying about how she might treat the new hires sharing the same space with her. When the day of the event arrived, I observed the new hires closely, and fortunately, their expressions were bright and cheerful, putting my mind at ease. Midway through the event, my appointment as the new senior executive director would be announced. I hadn't had much interaction with the new hires who joined in April, but it was arranged for me to stand beside them when the announcement was made. The announcement was scheduled for the middle of the social gathering. As the drinks started flowing, the event grew more lively. Since my introduction was scheduled alongside the new employee self-introductions, I decided to greet Megan first. After all, I hadn't seen her in weeks, and going forward, I would outrank her as the new senior executive director. Building smooth communication with her would make things much easier. With this in mind, I approached her to initiate a conversation. "Megan, it's been a while. I apologize for not greeting you sooner." When I apologized for the delay, Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, I hadn't seen you around recently. I thought you might have quit. Well, at least you're not so spineless as to run away in under a month." True to form, she hurled a cutting remark at me before downing her glass of wine. Then, with her face flushed, she said to me, "This is the first time I've had to deal with a high school graduate as my team member. Do me a favor and never show up in front of me again." With that, she poured herself another glass of red wine. As she picked it up, I assumed she was about to drink it, but instead, she threw it at me. Even with all the hardships I endured due to my educational background in my younger years, this was the first time I had been treated so disgracefully. The intense discomfort I felt wasn't solely from the wine soaking through my shirt. I knew I needed to confront Megan with the reality of her behavior. I wiped my face with a napkin in my hand and said in a cold voice, "I'm your boss. In fact, I've even requested to have you relieved of that position as of today." "What?" Megan let out a startled sound, staring at me in disbelief. It was no surprise. She thought I was just a new hire in an entry-level position. She had been piling menial tasks on me, likely assuming it was only natural to boss around someone with a low educational background. Still unable to grasp the situation, Megan soon returned to her usual condescending demeanor and laughed as she said, "Don't get all high and mighty, you lowly small-town guy with no education. Why on earth would you be my boss? That's not even a funny joke. Try pulling something like that again and you're fired." At that moment, Sam approached us with a glass in hand. Sam's face was quite flushed, so it seemed the alcohol was starting to get to him. In his usual casual manner, he threw an arm around my shoulder and, with a slightly slurred voice, said, "Henry, I've been waiting for your return. I've been wanting to take this company to the next level, and with you back, it's as good as done." He then let out a hearty laugh. Megan turned to Sam and asked, "Sam, do you know this man? He's just some uneducated guy who can't even clean properly. But don't worry, I'll whip him into shape within a few months, so he's at least somewhat useful. You can count on me." Sam, who had been all smiles, now looked visibly irritated at Megan's remarks. Noticing Sam's reaction, even Megan seemed to sense something was off and hurriedly added more to her explanation. At headquarters, all employees take turns cleaning the front entrance, but this guy always slacks off, and he only recently started making coffee for his supervisors. It used to be a given back in the day. Has the culture changed or something? Megan seemed completely unaware of how badly she was digging herself into a hole. Sam furrowed his brow even deeper and said in a solemn voice, "Megan, are you telling me you've been making Henry clean or make coffee? What on earth do you think he is?" Sam's voice carried an edge of anger, and Megan shrank back like a small animal caught by a predator. Sam was about to explain who I was, but the event organizer took the microphone to make an announcement. Following the instructions, the employees took their seats while the new hires and I stepped forward. It seemed the introductions for both the new employees and myself were about to begin. I walked up the stage in the banquet hall and, as prompted by the organizer, listened to the new hires introduce themselves. After everything was finished, the host began explaining my background. As I listened, I noticed even from a distance that Megan's face was growing visibly pale. When I was introduced as the newly appointed senior executive director, applause erupted throughout the room. Once the introductions of the new hires concluded, the room returned to casual conversation and laughter. I greeted the employees who came over to speak with me and then returned to Sam's side. Next to him, Megan was trembling, her teeth audibly chattering. "Now do you understand that I wasn't just saying random things? You're an executive officer, and I'm the senior executive director. In other words, I'm your boss." As I continued, Megan completely flipped her attitude and began speaking to me politely. "Oh, I see. Please forgive my many offenses. I had only heard that someone from a small-town branch in 2 was joining us. Since it's an unfamiliar and remote-sounding place, I mistakenly assumed someone unremarkable had been sent. But how could someone from such a location rise so suddenly to the position of senior executive director? I find it a bit puzzling." Her words made it clear why she had been so dismissive of me. Apparently, she had misunderstood the information she had received about my background. With a wry smile, I corrected her. "You're talking about Toulouse in France. I worked there, expanded our distribution network throughout France, and secured contracts for both residential and commercial projects." Hearing this, Megan's already pale face turned even colder. Sam then added more context with serious tone. He wasn't just working in Toulouse. Our sales in France were originally quite weak. With the U.S. facing population decline, expanding internationally became essential for growing our profits. He's the one who opened that door for us. Megan clasped her hands in front of her and, like a dog wagging its tail at its master, replied in an overly friendly tone, "Oh, is that so? That's truly amazing. Henry, I'm so thrilled to have a chance to work with you. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to let me know. Since you're new to headquarters, there must be a lot of things you're still getting used to." Megan had likely climbed the ranks by flattering her superiors in this way. To be honest, she was exactly the type of person I disliked the most. She would thoroughly look down on those she considered beneath her, pushing them to the point of breaking their spirit and undermining their character. At the same time, she would go out of her way to please those above her, seeking recognition not through ability, but through other means. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of contempt for someone like Megan. Instead of responding to Megan's words, I addressed Sam. Moving forward, we need to focus on developing sales strategies centered on Europe and Asia. To ensure these initiatives go smoothly, I'd like to discuss personnel matters. When I said this, Sam nodded deeply. After all, the most important thing is people. If there's any talent you need to achieve your goals, I'll make it happen. And of course, if there are people who aren't necessary, we address that too. Tell me your thoughts. As expected of Sam, he was quick to get to the point. He likely already understood what I was getting at. With Megan standing there, completely unaware of what was about to unfold, I spoke clearly. I've observed the employees work at headquarters, and I must say, they're all highly capable and very reassuring. However, I find it unacceptable that Megan holds an executive officer position. At the very least, I request that she be removed from any role near me immediately. Megan's face turned bright red as she protested. Wait a minute, we barely worked together. So what could you possibly know about me? Just because you had some success overseas doesn't mean you can justify this. Then Megan glared at Sam. In response, Sam looked at her with a cold expression and said, To be frank, negative rumors about you, Megan, have already reached us. Moving forward, we'll be in touch, but you should expect a thorough investigation to be conducted. Megan probably had no recollection of her actions. She looked confused and raised her voice at Sam. I don't understand. Please be more specific. What exactly are you accusing me of? While I wasn't privy to the details of the investigation, even from my brief interactions with Megan, I had a good sense of what it might involve. I share my thoughts directly with Sam. Could be related to verbal abuse or compliance violations. I've personally felt there were significant issues with many of Megan's remarks. Sam nodded deeply. Exactly, Henry. That's right. The reports detail numerous instances of behavior and comments that are simply unacceptable. It's something we cannot ignore. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Megan leaning forward, seemingly about to deny the allegations. Before she could speak, I cut her off, confronting her with the facts. That's right. I was repeatedly assigned tasks unrelated to my role and belittled for my educational background. With that kind of behavior, it's no surprise this is being viewed as a problem. Well, let's wait and see how the investigation progresses. Hearing my words, Megan appeared to recall instances she couldn't deny and slumped in defeat. She didn't say another word after that. A team was quickly assembled to investigate Megan, and interviews began immediately. The investigation uncovered not only the facts Megan admitted to, but also that many employees had suffered under her actions. Beyond assigning them menial tasks, other employees have been treated as personal errand runners for Megan's convenience or faced derogatory comments about their alma maters that attacked their character. The private university graduate Megan had once boasted about to me was also interviewed. It turned out Megan's story was true, and her actions had caused that employee to develop a mental health condition. Her offenses were severe, and the company, including Sam and other executives, issued apologies and promised appropriate compensation. Naturally, Megan wouldn't escape unscathed. She had taken advantage of her position as an executive officer to act as she pleased, but that would no longer be the case. It was reported that the Human Resources Department was considering terminating her employment, so I might never see Megan in the company again. As for me, I'm now leading the strategy team focused on expanding our sales channels into Asia. Unlike France, breaking into the Asia market is far more challenging. In addition to lacking brand recognition in the region, Asian consumers are highly environmentally conscious, creating significant barriers to entry. Even so, our company's technology has a low environmental impact, and our customer satisfaction rates are high. Combined with our new technologies, I'm confident that if we communicate our strengths effectively, there will undoubtedly be demand in Asia. While it won't be easy, my track record has led to high expectations for me. Ultimately, it's not about which high school or college you attended. It's about the value you brought to society as a professional. From now on, I want to continue living fully in the present so that my future self can be proud of who I am today.